G'day everyone. Nathan here and Brett as well.
Hi, Nath.
So, welcome to our first episode, which we're calling today Big Moves, SEQH's Future and the Port Expansion. And I want to highlight in particular that the key words there are expansion. There's a lot of people that grow and relocate to the port and set up at the port. But we have been in Hemet for a very long time, and Toowoomba, and formerly over on the north side. But we are making a massive leap and expanding into the port. So I've got some leading great questions today, and let's join together and smash through these, Brett.
Great.
So kicking things off first, SEQH dates back to the 1960s, and you've been leading the company since 1997. What are some of the most defining moments that have shaped the company over the years?
Thanks, Nath. Yes, as you say, I acquired the business in 1997, and it was a very different business to the business we own today and operate today. I think probably the first defining moment was moving away from the existing fleet we had at the time, which was an old Japanese fleet, and moving to the Mack Volvo product. That was an important stepping stone. Another big step was to move and reorient our strategy away from tippers, which we predominantly were at that stage, a tipping fleet, with some containers, and to flip that on its head. So we're largely a full-service container operator at the Port of Brisbane, and that was probably the key strategic move we made. Part of that process was getting better at doing larger volumes. And then the step forward from there was to move away from the north side to Hemet, where we originally set up basically a transfer yard, which we're probably only one of, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4, 5 maybe carriers doing that at the time.
That actually had a hubbing station.
Situation with reach stackers or container handlers and stuff that separated the customer from the port, and hence the slot time. So that was in about 2005, 2006, I think, from memory. And then, having seen the success of that and the capacity for us to leverage that and to grow, we said, right, we've got to be somewhere over here, either in Lytton or in Hemet, just off the port, where we can own, improve our facilities, and provide greater certainty for our customers and lower costs, because we wanted to avoid that toll at the bridge. Which is a huge impost on all of us.
And I think the other notable thing as well is, if we look back on your background, you've got very much a risk management and finance-driven background.
Yes.
And so I want you to talk a little bit about the innovation side and diversification.
Sure.
Moving towards
a key
strategy.
point you raise is risk, and that's one of the reasons why I guess I've always been of the view that I prefer to own assets rather than lease them. We can improve them. We can adapt to market changes more quickly. We're not at the behest of a landlord, and I've always played it that way. It's a low risk way of doing it, and risk is key to that outlook. It slows your growth down. We could have grown a lot more quickly if we'd acquired businesses and done more lease deals. But I'm always on the view that if it turns really bad and they're carting people out, we'll be the last person they're carting out. Because we're the lowest risk operator and one of the lower cost operators. So that's always been at the forefront of my mind is, understand who the weak players are and make sure we're one of the strong players. So our customers, that gives our customers certainty that we'll still be here through thick and through thin. Depressions, recessions or expansions, we'll be here.
And what's the saying you always say, which is if you don't know who the weakest player is in the room,
it's probably you.
That's right. And the other thing that comes to mind as well is, moving the strategy towards a port interface, whereas in the past the business was heavily diverted towards local tipper work.
Operations, that's right.
And you didn't get rid of that.
No.
It was more the case of actually, with intention, chasing down that international trade.
New strategy, that's right, because ultimately trade is at the centre of what pretty much we all do. We wear it, we drive it. Trade is critical to Australia. So for mine, the strategy was pretty simple once I got my head around the business, was that diversification was key. There's three strategies I used to tell people: diversification, diversification, and diversification. That was the three strategies. So get with the program.
Yep.
Having established that we wanted to be a port operator and to be a major port operator, the way forward from there was pretty simple: get land, get in Hemet, and get big.
Yep.
Which
So
we did.
then probably flowing into the next two questions are critical to the strategy as well.
Yes.
So in 2011, the company expanded into Toowoomba.
Yes.
So talk us through the driving force behind this move and how it's contributed to the growth of the company.
Sure. It certainly has contributed to our growth, and it's a very key aspect for our business. The logic was simple. It's about diversification as well, about risk reduction.
Yep.
So if you look at the economy, it goes up and goes down based on interest rates, what the global economy is doing, etc. But grain and other agricultural products respond to rain, and they're unrelated. So one way to diversify against economic activity is to have an agricultural exposure, and that was sort of the thinking behind it. We also had some good inquiry from customers, and we were observing that potentially the method, the rail was failing due to lack of investment from the government.
Yep.
And that the way things are being done with B-doubles was at the edge of legality, and also was leaving a bit on the table. They didn't have enough weight in the boxes. They were going short on the weight, so that was costing exporters. So there was a more efficient way. So part of our expansion into Toowoomba was in effect to bring some new technology to those rural exporters.
Yep.
Which we did, in the shape of the A-double.
You did, yeah. So let's delve into that because you had some good people around you. You partnered with,
Yes.
and strategically
Yes.
created what is
Yes.
now positioned all around Australia.
Yes, and I didn't allude to it previously, but certainly the alignment with Volvo and Mack and the alignment with Hallmark Trailers were critical junctures in our growth. So as you say, aligning with good people who can see a problem, because innovation doesn't happen in a balloon, it doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens because there's a problem to solve. So that's the nub of innovation. So find a problem, innovate to fix the problem.
Yep.
So yes, working with strong partners like Hallmark and the Volvo Group.
Yep. And I just think it's just absolutely amazing when you think of the simple fact of road trains historically are playing out in country, and then they get to Toowoomba, and it's disconnect, baby, pull apart.
They turn to a pumpkin. That's it.
And all of a
End of
sudden,
story.
it's this, you're running down the hill with singles, or as you said,
B-doubles,
limited B-doubles. And overnight, that changed. You
That's
you
right.
had a 3-year warm up to actually get into that point.
That's right.
Working with those partners and government and so forth.
Yes.
But then all of a sudden, 2 down the hill.
2 down the hill, which but also at higher weights.
Yep.
So that's kind of the key thing, because all the exporters are paying by container. So if you put 2 tonne in a container, you're paying the same price if you put 25 tonne in the container.
Yep.
So where you're going short on that weight and not using the cubic capacity, then you're giving up. You're not maximising your opportunity.
Yep. Yep. Pretty cool. And I just remember some of those news articles we have posted in our boardroom
Yes.
of those crazy folk heading down
Yes.
the range.
Yes.
2 at a time,
Calling-
and
Yeah.
with
Some journalist trying to beat up some story about monster trucks or some damn thing.
yeah.
They obviously hadn't been west of Toowoomba.
No. They're in Toowoomba, but not
west
further
of
west.
Toowoomba. That's right.
No. Perfect. So leading further into the A-double side of things, you started with the standard A-double in 2010,
Yes.
and then the second adoption from that, I want you to talk about
Sure.
the single axle A-double,
Yep. most certainly.
2017.
Yep.
And then merge into our third one,
Sure.
being the tri-axle A-double
Sure.
in 2018.
I'd always been in the view that we should add more of the same.
Yep.
But that comes with cost. And of course, in the container game, for every full, there's a corresponding empty.
Yep.
So eventually I got my head around this concept that we needed to have a cheaper vehicle, because every day we came and did, let's say, 100 fulls, we also did 100 empties.
Yep.
So let's get a dedicated fleet that costs us less because it is registration's less, purchase cost is less, maintenance is less. Let's get a fleet dedicated to empties to assist the fulls. So the single axle registration is 1/3 of the registration of one of our standard A-doubles trailers. So we basically just developed that as a way, and with a standard dolly which we could use in other A-double combinations. So it was exactly the same dolly. That reduced our cost. The trailers were probably, I suppose, about 2/3 the price, and Rego is 1/3 the price.
Yep.
So that certainly cheapened it up. But the other interesting thing from an operational point of view, it did was gave us focus. So we couldn't use those for fulls. So we had to move the empties, which was good because from an operational point of view, it gave people focus.
Yep.
Move the empties.
Yep.
Don't leave them sit.
They can't be forgotten.
They can't be forgotten.
Yep. That's perfect. And then we had the third one.
Yeah, the tries. The tries were a function of heavy boxes coming out of our Hemmett yard.
Yep.
One of the problems, or I'd argue, with the PBS system is it has a few guardrails on it.
Yep.
And there's
That's
a number
a
of
polite
these.
way.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I could call it some other things too in industrial language, but I won't. So one of those is 85-tonne cap on a 2B vehicle. So that just precludes a whole bunch of innovation beyond what people thought with the standard A-double, the one we first came out with, the bogey dolly. So tri-dollies and other axle combinations which can go well beyond 85 tonne and still fit within 30 metres. So we had to get over the 85 tonne cap, which we eventually convinced TMR and the port was always very supportive to cart these 32.5 tonne max weight 40-foot containers. The tri dolly in the middle gave us 36 tonne capacity on the back position, so that was perfect for carting 32 tonne boxes. So hence, have a problem?
Yep.
Come up with a solution.
Yep.
So the first solution was how do we reduce costs and provide focus?
Yep.
Second problem is we've got these 32 tonne boxes. How do we deal with them?
Yep.
Rather than running really light singles, we want to cart them up. We want to cart containers 2 up. That was our strategy from the get-go.
Yep.
And one of the key drivers behind the A-double was to level the playing field with the island, with Fisherman's Island. So the way to do that, to cart 240s, was to have an A-double that could cart 240s. So, hey presto.
Nice.
See a problem? Innovate and find a solution.
Yep. Beautiful. So looking ahead to 2025, as I started as I mentioned at the very start here, we are expanding into the Port of Brisbane.
Most certainly.
And we've had some great collaboration with the guys down there.
The port is really good to deal with.
And we're moving in. We're moving in. So talk us through.
You could actually say we've moved in, but
yes, depending on the time you're listening.
Yep.
So what does this actually mean for SEQH, and why is this such a significant step for the company?
Sure. As I said, part of our risk profile was risk reduction, and that was if we own it, we can improve it, and we needed bank support to buy stuff, so that puts a constraint on your growth. Moving to the island, to Fisherman's Island at the port, it's all leasehold land, so we've got to use the port to build it for us effectively. So it allows us to scale up our growth more rapidly than we would have done in the past. It also gives us the opportunity to operate at some interesting vehicles that are different to what we can operate off island, which improves our productivity and in effect justifies the concept of, in my mind, of leasing property to expand. So that's kind of the kicker in here is at the port we can do things differently. We can run longer vehicles, heavier vehicles, more boxes per truck, and per transit. So it's more efficient as well.
Yep. And a different style of over-dimensional cargo as well.
We got much better OD arrangements on island. So and that's an advantage to our outer gauge business.
Yeah, which is really the next question I had is how does this expansion for us, how's it going to benefit our customers as well? And that's one right there, handling outer gauge over-dimensional cargo.
Yes, we can handle bigger pieces.
Yep. Take
them off flat racks and then bring them out without, whereas previously we couldn't do that. That's sort of one example. Being more efficient on how we handle containers, because the lead or the distance between our yard and the stevedores is a lot closer.
Yep.
So we can get more turns in, which means we can get boxes out of the wharf quicker and more efficiently. And then effectively utilise those trucks we had previously put on the wharf run to actually service our customers.
Yep. And just on that note, talking about transit times, it makes me think about some of the conversations we've had over the years with our friends at the stevedores.
Mm-hmm.
What we're being educated on is the reality that in the future, larger vessels are going to be coming into Brisbane.
Yes.
And less frequently.
Yes.
So we're going to have these highs and we're going to have these dips.
Yes.
Where you will have these surges where it's, divert all that fleet towards the wharf.
Yep.
And send exports in within, a certain time frame.
Yes.
And then rush and get all those imports out.
Yes.
And then a bit of a pause potentially, somewhat, whilst you're then taking those containers out to the actual customers. Or, dealing with the warehousing side of things like that.
Yes.
And it just makes me really think back, like I was cycling home yesterday and I passed a Skell parked up on the side of the road with a box on it. And I could see it straight away. I was like, that's a small carrier right there.
Yep.
And, that was your situation, 30 years back, 28 years back.
20 years back, yeah.
Which is just absolutely incredible. Like the scenario of, well, I've got it off the wharf, but the customer doesn't want it.
So I've got to deal with it.
I've got to park it on the street.
Yep.
Because I don't have a hubbing operation. I don't have a fork. And
I
now
hope no one comes and breaks the seal and gets into the container. That's right. Or hooks a truck under it and goes.
And I was literally thinking about that, like, there's that's not the way forward. That model is not the way forward.
No.
And it's amazing what has been achieved in business so far, and the hubbing operation we have today and how substantial it is.
Yes.
Let alone once we integrate and expand into the port as well.
Yes.
What that benefit's going to have for our export customers and our import customers too.
That's right.
Keeping in mind those larger vessels coming through.
Yeah, and the second stage, Nathan, of that growth down at the Port of Brisbane is the capacity to offer bigger warehousing solutions and maybe some bulk solutions as well.
Yep.
To our customers. So there's certainly an opportunity to talk to us about that over the next year or so.
Yep.
So we can potentially accommodate some of those interests that our customers might have.
Yep. Notwithstanding what we have in store for Hemmant, but that's for another time. That's for another exciting declaration.
Yep.
But what we will shift into right now is just talking about our company values, innovation, collaboration, and integrity.
Yep.
These are the core of our company's success.
Yep.
So I want you to talk about how do these values actually shape the way we do business and interact with our team and partners.
Yep. Certainly. Well, our values are the how we do stuff. Our vision, if you like, is our overarching rationale for being, and that's forging partnerships and challenging ourselves to make logistics seamless. So a couple of things: forging partnerships with our customers and suppliers, challenging ourselves, which is about the innovation idea, and making logistics seamless, which is about our customers' focus. They don't want to be involved in the nuts and bolts, the time slot, the stevedores running late,
the traffic, the breakdowns,
whatever it is. So they're the sort of three things about vision, about how as a company, what we aim for. The how is the values, as you said, integrity, innovation, and collaboration. So integrity is a key piece in terms of doing what we say. Innovation has been the core of the way we look at business since day dot. How do we change the game to add value to our customers? That's really the concept. It's pretty simple. Yep. If we keep doing the same thing, how do we expect a different outcome or a different outcome for our customers?
Yep.
We've got to continually ask, is this the best way? Is there a safer way? Is there a better way? Is there a more efficient way? And obviously as road rules change and driving rules change, that we've got to continually ask ourselves, is there a better way? And the glue which holds it all together is the collaboration piece, how we collaborate with our customers and how we collaborate internally with our employees and how our employees can collaborate together, and also our suppliers, how we collaborate with our suppliers.
Yep. And, that I can see just ricocheting through the business over the last, 28 plus years, where you look at the longevity of the relationship we've had with Mac.
Yep.
The longevity with, our other trailing manufacturers as well.
Yep.
The number of clients that we have that are 10, 15, 20,
long-termers,
even surpassing your ownership of the company 30 plus years.
Yep.
It's that piece there that we do love of that collaboration with our network.
This is the partnership concept, forging partnerships,
Yep.
Partnerships have good times and bad times. The point is that we've all got to work through the bad times, come up with solutions, innovations to try and minimise those and move forward together, Everyone's going to have a bad day. Everyone's going to have a bad period where things aren't going right in their industry or their staff or whatever it might be. So we've got to look beyond that and forge a partnership.
Yep.
It's bigger than the day or the week or the month.
Yep. Lovely. So the transport industry is constantly evolving.
Mm-hmm.
What do you, in your mind's eye, see as the biggest challenge ahead, and how is SEQH preparing for them?
Labour is certainly a big challenge. If I think back to when I was a young fella sitting on, my dad's need in his truck, you could do that. I was driving a truck in a quarry at 10 years old. You can't do that today. So the skill level of people coming through in those days was quite high because there was plenty of opportunities to get exposure to what was good behaviour and bad behaviour and, what made sense. People don't get that now, so we've got to train them. So training and having systems that work for people are important, and that's also bringing in the other half of the population that don't figure very strongly in the transport industry and the logistics industry currently, which is our female participants. Yeah, we need to get them in there. So they're big challenges for the industry. And the other one, I suppose, is how we deal with imported labour. And the logistics industry is a huge part of the Australian economy, but we haven't quite got the buy-in yet from government to assist us with imported drivers, and that's a real issue. It's a real issue that needs to get addressed because we can bring in hairdressers, but we can't bring in drivers. Hairdressing is less than 1% of the economy. Logistics is probably in excess of 20.
Yep.
And we don't have the same reciprocity.
Yep. Lovely. All right. So technology and sustainability. I'll leave this as our last question.
Mm-hmm.
Technology and sustainability are second last question. Technology and sustainability are reshaping logistics.
Yep.
Where do you see SEQH in the next decade, and how will we continue to innovate?
Yep. Well, the first thing is I don't see diesel disappearing overnight. So everything we do has got to be more efficient in terms of the litres expended per outcome. So that's about the A-doubles was a great answer to that problem. It reduces our diesel and hence emissions per unit, per tonne, per item, per car. We've got to continue to move down those tracks. One of the issues at the moment, of course, is Australia's productivity is not growing. But if I look at the transport industry as a small microcosm of what's going on in the economy, we have too much overbearing regulation. We have, we've had great systems, and the PBS scheme, for example, is a good example of that. But if you look at the evolution of the PBS scheme, it's been stuck in clay for 20-something years now. Not much has changed. Mm-hmm. So, we ask why is productivity per person not growing? Without immigration, productivity is going backwards. And that's because we're not looking at these constraints we place on people to allow greater improvements in efficiency. And there's like 3 projects I'd like to bring on right now, which would improve on some of the things we do 50% productivity increase. But at the moment, unfortunately, I'm preaching to a deaf ear. Mm. So, but I'm eternally optimistic that we'll get some of these things through, which will increase productivity and give greater opportunities for exporters and importers to do stuff at lower cost, and also, most importantly, in terms of cost of diesel per unit.
Yep.
It'll reduce it. The other thing too is electricity. So we've probably got some stuff to talk about that later, Nath.
Yep.
About electric trucks. Certainly, that's something we'll be getting involved in.
Yep. And then probably the other thing down the track is autonomous vehicles.
Most certainly. That yes. I'm not sure how. I suspect you'll still be managing the company, Nath, when that happens. I'm not sure I will be, but it is certainly coming. I mean, and in our cars we see that now.
Yes.
There is.
Yeah.
They've got lots of features that that provide input to driving.
Yep. Yep. That's definitely one for another deeper
That's right.
time.
Yeah, for another podcast.
Yep. But finally. So if you could sum up SEQH's journey in just a few words, what would they be?
It's been a fun ride, and I've enjoyed every day. As I say, if you come to work and you do what you enjoy, you don't work it a day in your life. So it's my journey, and I got to say I'm incredibly lucky because I was born at a time when you could do lots of things. The world was your oyster, and the economy for the last 30 years, probably since 1991, really hasn't had a serious pullback in Australia. So pretty much anything you did worked in the end.
Yep.
So that's I've been incredibly lucky, born at a very lucky time. So I don't look past that at all.
Lucky is an interesting word. I think you also create your pathway too.
You create your own luck, but
and when we made the announcement of our next move and expansion of the port to the management team, as I said, a massive recognition to yourself on what you've gone through over the last few decades in supporting, backing, building this company. Bearing a lot of risk yourself as well. There's a lot of careers that have been developed. Family supported, clients supported as well.
Yes.
Industry's benefited. And here we are. Expansion. So stay tuned for more chattery around this topic and many more. And let's go.
Thanks, Nate.
Thank you.
There we go.